If you're an aspiring music producer and you want to improve your sounds, sidechaining can be one of the most powerful techniques. And if you're unfamiliar with the term, now is as good a time as any to learn how and why you should use sidechaining. So let's get into it. Hello there, my inspirations. My name is InspirAspir. If you're a newer music producer and you're trying to improve your sounds, and if you're unfamiliar with the term sidechaining, then this is the video for you. To put it bluntly, short and sweet, sidechaining is the act of making one sound duck whenever a certain event triggers. Typically, EDM artists use this to make drum sounds pop. So for example, a kick drum can be the triggering event to make another sound duck or lower in volume. So that way, anytime the kick drum is played, the other sound that is sidechained to that drum temporarily gets quieter, making the drum shine a little brighter. For now, I'll give you an example actually, because I think it's best to learn by example. In front of me here on my screen in Ableton, I have two songs, or at least parts of songs. They're the exact same song, they were exported from the same exact Ableton file, except as you can see here, one of these audio files includes sidechaining on different elements of the song, and this other audio file does not have any sidechaining at all whatsoever. So first, I'm gonna play this audio file, the no sidechain, so you get a feel of what we're working with. Just a basic progressive house loop that I kind of threw together. I learned how to make this from a YouTuber named Seven. I give credit where credit is due. It's an excellent tutorial series, go check it out. Now this blue audio file is the same exact song, but with certain elements sidechained to the kick drums. So for example, the bass line, chords, leads, sound effects. That's pretty much it. And the difference is staggering. So here it is with sidechaining. Immediately you'll notice that the kicks start to shine through, as I mentioned. And that's because by the power of sidechaining, you can tie the kick drums, or in theory any other sound, to any layer of your song. And then anytime that sound plays, the volume on that other layer temporarily ducks down. Again, real quick, I'm going to jump back and forth between no sidechain and sidechain just so you grasp the difference. So, we know what sidechaining does, great, but how exactly do you get it to work, and what do you do with it? That is a great question. So here is the Ableton session that I used to make that song, and here are my kick drums used in this song. It's important that I'm pointing this out, of course, because as I mentioned, I've sidechained my other elements to these kicks. You'll notice that on certain layers of this song, so for example, this layer of chords, down here in the bottom right, I have a compressor, and this is what's doing the sidechaining, as you can see here. I'm gonna get rid of this for now, so that way I can add my own compressor in and explain to you step by step how you sidechain. The most basic sidechain in Ableton is the compressor, as you just saw. Now, you can download external and third-party plugins and VSTs that are meant solely for sidechaining, and a lot of them out there are super high quality. But for the sake of this tutorial, the compressor can provide the most basic version of sidechaining and can get the job done. So in Ableton, you just drag this compressor down onto your track that you want sidechaining on. In any other DAW, you can do this similarly. You'll just have to look up how you do it using your certain software. So now that I have this compressor on this track, this chords layer, I'm gonna click this arrow button and expand it out. This brings up an interface on the left with a button that says sidechain. It's currently grayed out, which means it's off. If I were to click it, that means it's toggled and is now on. Let's solo my chords track to hear what it sounds like by itself. Just a simple stack of chords, nothing too crazy. I should have mentioned before I added the compressor and toggled the sidechain button that this sounds the same whether this compressor is here or not. And that's because clicking this sidechain button doesn't just automatically, magically create sidechaining. I have to now route it from somewhere. Right below the sidechain button, it says audio from. There's a drop-down menu. If I were to click it, this shows every layer that's currently in this Ableton session. Essentially what this does is it allows me to pick an audio source that I will use to trigger the sidechaining. So as I mentioned, I'm gonna be using the kicks as my sidechain source. And what this will be doing is every time a kick drum plays, the volume of this chords layer will dip temporarily to allow that kick drum to come out and pop. So I select my kicks layer and I hit play to see what that did. sounds like nothing has happened, and that's because for the most part, nothing has. If I were to go down here, about in the middle of this black window, and click this symbol right here, this third most square, this will show me the input from this kick's track that I sidechained to. So if I were to hit play, this is an audio waveform of my kick drums. If I were to solo these two tracks together and look at this graph as I play, you'll notice that's when the kicks happen. Naturally, the higher the peak is, the louder the sound is, and the lower it is, the quieter. So now if I were to click this second square, normally when you compress without sidechaining, this will increase the volume of your track, depending how much you compress it. Essentially adds more gain to your sound. But once you sidechain, this is now used to determine how strong that sidechain is. If I were to click and drag this circle, this is the knee, you'll notice that because once I click and drag and move my mouse up or down, it bends this line. Looks like a knee, right? You'll notice that once I click and drag this circle downwards and also bend the knee a little bit, that's when the sidechaining action starts to happen. So I'm gonna hit play and just slowly do that. You'll notice that the closer I get to this bottom left corner determines how strong the sidechaining is. How much I bend the knee then determines what percentage of the sidechaining I'm doing, where a straight line means 0%, or you can see this ratio says 1:1. So if I were to move the circle to the very bottom left corner and also bend the knee as far as I can, I get an extreme amount of sidechaining. If I were now to go back to this graph, you'll notice that this orange bar, which represents the volume of this current track, it dips significantly once those kicks hit. And you notice that over time, it slowly gets a little bit louder, then once the kick happens again, it just drops immediately. That creates this sawtooth pattern. Now, I honestly think this is a little extreme, so I'm gonna move this roughly to the middle and bend the knee, I don't know, about halfway. Just kind of adjust it, play around with it. Until I get that kind of bouncy feel that I want. I kind of feel that where it goes wow, 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 wow. And if I look at my graph, this is what's happening again. I suppose this isn't really a graph, but you get what I'm saying. From here you can also tweak parameters like the attack, which determines how quickly the sidechaining will alter the volume. So a super low attack means this will take 1 second until the sidechain were to occur. Since it doesn't have a full second to actually do that, obviously nothing really happens. Where, inversely, the very opposite, if I were to have the lowest attack, that means the sidechain happens almost instantaneously, the second that kick drum happens. We're gonna leave it about 0.5 for now. Also, this release indicates how long the sidechaining is activated for. A low release means that it's only gonna wait 1 millisecond after the attack is done before it starts to go back up to full volume, or until it is at full volume. A very, very high release, so for example, this case, 3 seconds, means after one sidechaining hit happens, it'll take 3 seconds until it's back at full volume. And boop. So you can tweak these parameters to adjust the sound to your liking. Ultimately, the goal of sidechaining is to make one sound stick through, typically drums, and in this case, kicks. You can also sidechain sounds to snare drums, or maybe even a unique sound effect that you really want to stick through, that you want to be prominent. This way it makes your sounds fit together like puzzle pieces, as opposed to being layered over top of each other. Like in the beginning of this video where you heard the comparison from a sidechain song to a song that is not sidechained. The one without sidechaining just sounds super muddy, and that's just because there's a bunch of sounds on top of each other, and you can't really hear the kick drum. Once you sidechain each element to the kick drum, once that kick goes through, it creates a temporary valley, if you will, in terms of silence. There's just a short burst of silence. But that kick drum will then fill it in. And that's pretty much it for the basics of sidechaining. As I mentioned, you can go way more complex if you were to get third-party plugins and VSTs. but the concept is there. So hopefully, if you're a newer music producer, you now have a better grasp on sidechaining if you didn't before, and maybe you can use this knowledge to improve your mix and make a better song. So that'll do it for this tutorial. I appreciate you watching, hope you learned a lot. I will see you in the next one. Bye. If you enjoyed this video, please consider listening to my new single, Tempest, out now. Click this video to go listen to it. Or if you want to continue learning more awesome music stuff from me, click here to watch my full music production tutorial playlist. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it.